Hi everyone and welcome back to my top 500 games, and we are currently at number 133, which is Super Meat Boy, and this is a game that was very well received when it came out on the Xbox 360, and that was the same day that I got it as well, because I believe it was actually on sale if you bought it early. But this is a platform game that gets very highly praised. The idea behind it is that you don't necessarily have any specific unique abilities. All you can really do is run and jump, and you can also slide down walls and just use the physics of the game in order to be able to get through all of the levels. And there's a lot of obstacles along the way, so you'll have like chainsaws, and you'll have crumbling rocks that you can slide on or run across, and you'll also have these locked walls or floors where you collect a key and it will unlock them. And each level is very short, so you don't actually go back too far if you do die. So you'll die and then you'll just instantly reappear back at the start of the level. There's no checkpoints within the levels, but the levels are so short that that's why you get sent back to the start anyway. And one thing this game is rather famous for is being really hard, and I do absolutely agree with that. I got to a point where there's this boss with the two worms that jump out of the ground, and you have to get them to jump into the chainsaws. I could never beat that boss. Since there really isn't any combat, so to speak, in this game, the bosses are usually just different variations of run away from this thing or avoid the attacks of this thing. In fact, there is one boss which is basically like a memory game. You have to remember the pattern by which he slams the ground and stuff, which most people don't like, but I don't really have a problem with that particular boss. And also, what I really like about this game is just the amount of stuff that there is, because you'll have each set of levels in each world, and each one of those will have bandages within each level, so it's like an optional thing for you to go and get. But you can also find these black holes which are like the warp zone, and they'll take you to extra levels. And on top of all that, there's also the dark world as well, which is like a more difficult variation of all the other levels. And so it's really nice how they do manage to stack up all this stuff on top of each other. The biggest problem that I have really though is that one of the big things that this game gets a lot of praise for, and this is its own subject really, but one of the big things that this game gets a lot of praise for is how everything's fast, how everything's sudden, and when you die you teleport right back to the start and you don't have to replay that much. But I always have to mention this because having a system where there are lots of checkpoints doesn't mean there's going to be less repetition in the game, because fewer checkpoints means that there's going to have to be more deaths occurring in order to balance it out, and as a result you will be sent back to the beginning many times, and it can get to the point where you are playing the same level many tens of times, and I honestly do get to the point where I think this is just ridiculous. It's not a thing that I'm massively a fan of, really. In general, the whole thing of having lots of checkpoints and only having to repeat a small bit, but then having to repeat that small bit over and over again. It's a very condensed mechanic. Everything's very condensed into, you must do this specific thing at this specific time in this specific way. And so I think all of the praise that this game gets in regards to not making you repeat that much is completely incorrect, because you have to repeat levels loads and loads of times, and to me that is the biggest downside for this game, absolutely without question. I do think a positive of this game is the physics. It is very responsive with the controls. There is a very clear flow to it when you're jumping and you're flying through the air, and when I say flying I don't mean literal flying, I mean like a big leap forward through the air, and so it's very clear the way that things would work with each other. I think people really overemphasize that element of it though, I seriously do. But yeah, that is Super Meat Boy, or should I say that is Super Meat Boy! Number 132 is Soul Calibur 2, and this is a game that I actually had on the GameCube. The story behind me playing this game was, it was about, I don't know, 2002, 2003, around that time, and our computer, the home computer, and you have to remember this was at a time where you didn't really have mobile devices or games consoles that were connected online, at least not in our house. So the family computer wasn't working, and so I didn't really have access to go online. And in fact, I remember my granddad was over at the time and he was doing some work in the kitchen, which is right next to, no sorry, the bathroom, not the kitchen. He was doing some work in the bathroom, which is is right next to where the computer was. And so what I had done previously to that is I had ripped a CD of like Less Than Jake songs and Bad Religion songs, and because this is when I was starting to get into those bands, and I would just come into my room, put that CD on, put it on repeat, just play a few songs over and over, and play a couple of games, but one of those games was Soul Calibur 2. And so I have very strong memories of playing this game with a select few songs that I used to listen to at this time, and my granddad working in the bathroom on stuff. And so basically it's a fighting game in the Soul Calibur series, if you couldn't already tell by the name somehow. But what I really like about this game is that I really liked the single player campaign mode that wasn't the arcade mode, because you always got like an arcade mode which is just a series of fights, but this game had this extra campaign mode where you could go through individual cities and stuff, and you can defeat the different enemies in different ways, because each fight would have its own requirements. So it might be survive the round within 1 minute and just on really low health or something. Or there might be one where it's you have to knock your opponent out of the ring or something like that. And by doing this, you gained experience which caused you to level up. I don't think leveling up actually did anything. But you also got gold, and you could spend the gold that you got on different weapons for the different characters. And it was all universal across all characters. So you could pick any character you want and you could do anything, and then they'd all be done for every character, and you can buy weapons for any character. And I remember I started off by playing with Yun Sung a lot, but eventually I moved over to playing as Talim, who I found I had a lot easier time with. Now, I always say with fighting games is that I don't necessarily feel that I'm very good at them, but when you add a feature like this, it makes me a lot more interested in general. Also, because I was playing the GameCube version, I was also able to play as Link, which was very strange. It was actually also very strange to be able to play as Yoshimitsu as well, who's from Tekken, but I never really completed this mode. I remember I got to a point where the game had basically acted as if I had completed it, and then it just went, okay, here's a bunch more levels. And I don't remember if that exactly happened. Maybe I may be mistaken there, but that's what I remember. Number 131 is Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2, and I have a story about how I got this game, because this was not long after I originally got my PS2. So when would this have been? I would guess around 2002 as a guess, but I'm not too sure about that. But at this time I only had one PS2 game, and we as a family went to see my Auntie Eileen, who lives in Newcastle, and when we were there we went to the Metro Centre, this big shopping centre in Newcastle, and from there, I think it was in the W.H. Smith's or some store like that, I bought a few things, including 2 PS2 games and a DVD of Father Ted, the first series of Father Ted. And I remember I was really happy to get that DVD because, first of all, I really liked Father Ted, and second of all, it was my first DVD, so it was my first experience owning a DVD, which may seem strange these days, but back then it was quite a big thing to have a DVD of something as opposed to a VHS. And it was because the PS2 could play DVDs. It was like this brand new feature that I was excited for. But I watched that DVD when we went back to my auntie's house. But aside from that, I got 2 PS2 games, which are my second and third PS2 games I ever had, because like I said, I only had one PS2 game previously. But I didn't get to play those until I got home. But then I did play them, and one of those games I put it in, it was Dave Mirra's Freestyle BMX 2. And the best way I can describe this is that it's very much like a Tony Hawk's, Matt Hoffman's game. You know, one of those extreme sports type games where you've got to go around, do tricks, score points, accomplish goals, things like that. But it had a different feel to it. It felt like it was made by a separate company. I believe this one was created by Activision, which I know played a part in the Tony Hawk games, but I know that that was Neversoft that worked on those. But I did really get into this game, and I didn't complete it because it got to a point where I just found it too hard, to be honest. One thing that I did really like about this game was the music. Now, I don't remember all of the music in this game, but all of the ones that I do remember, I pretty much enjoyed. You have Sum 41's Makes No Difference. You have Phoenix TX's All My Fault. Those 2 are my favourites. You had The Cult with She Sells Sanctuary, Black Sabbath with Paranoid, you had Sublime with Summertime, and I'm probably pulling a blank right now because I don't remember exactly what else was on there, but I did enjoy a good chunk of music music from this game, which was common in Tony Hawk games and all that. It's just that I don't necessarily remember there being so much filler rap in this. I mean, I know there's going to be people out there who disagree with that, but to me, rap music in these games is just filler. That's how I see it. But there was some really, really hard challenges that you had to do in this game. I remember one of them in particular, there was this level where it was kind of like this canyon and there were all these dinosaur bones around everywhere. And there were these different minecarts that went around on this railway track and you had to grind them. And the accuracy that you needed to grind them, it wasn't a very good challenge. And to be honest, I don't think I was very fond of that level in general. I also remember there was one level where you had this giant blue slide. It was like a theme park or something like that. And I think you had to grind down this giant blue slide. And I just had some fun with it. I like this game. Number 130 is Tales of Vesperia. Now, I am not big into Tales of games. I've not really played that many, to be honest. And I think I'm more into the idea of Tales games than I am playing it from my experiences. Because, talking about Tales of Vesperia here, the battles were very easy. And I don't really get along so much with the combat system, so to speak, with the whole different attacks, because I find it very difficult to differentiate between one type of attack and another type of attack. So you have one type of attack where the character's shouting like dashing sword and they'll like swing the sword through the air, and then have another one where they do like an uppercut or something. But to me it's just different attacks doing damage, and so I have a very hard time really making that distinction. There was a few things I did like about Vesperia though, from my experience. It was nice to be able to learn abilities, the way that you equip stuff and the abilities accumulated. I also really liked, there was one point in the game where I managed to go to this island or this extra area where I felt like I wasn't meant to be there, if you know what I mean. Like, I felt like it was too high level or too late game for me, but I went there and I managed to kill some enemies and I managed to gain loads of experience from killing those enemies, which is always a good feeling. It's always a good feeling to be able to beat something that's like several levels ahead of you, and that's what I was able to do. I also like, and this is something that I've not managed to experience, but something that I know about the Tales of games, and that is the accumulation of grade, and grade being this particular type of thing that you gain or possibly lose at the end of battles based on your performance and the difficulty that it's been set to and all that. And then at the end of the game you can activate New Game Plus, but you can spend your grade on different buffs. So it might be like extra health or double experience or something like that. And I think if I did complete this game and I did get past that point, I would enjoy that aspect because that sounds more appealing to me. But in terms of it just being a JRPG with combat and items and leveling up and all that, I didn't feel it did too much for me overall. That's just my general feelings about it. But still, I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed travelling through the dungeons, and the dungeons I felt were decently sized, and I just generally had fun with it. Number 129 is Mega Man 10. And I have talked about a few different games in the main Mega Man series before, but I feel that Mega Man 10 really stepped it up, and it's possibly just nostalgia talking because I played this game in 2010, which is when it came out, and this was around that same time that I was watching lots of NoobTube. And I also mentioned this time when I was talking about Mega Man 9 because I used to get a collection of MIDIs from different games, and I used to listen to all the different MIDIs when I was doing my university work. And Mega Man 10 was one of those games where I did collect the different MIDIs. And so the premise is the same as it always is with these mainline Mega Man games. You start off with no weapons, you have a choice of 8 Robot Masters, you can defeat them in any order, although there is a recommended order if you look at the cycle of which weapon that you get is strong against which Robot Master. And then you go to the final level where you have to make use of all the different weapons and gadgets and stuff that you've acquired over the rest of the game in order to go and complete the game. One thing that makes this game stand out to me and makes it different to me is that I have actually completed this game. It wasn't super amazingly hard, would you believe? Now, originally I did beat it on easy mode. The difference with easy mode is that, well, aside from just being generally easier, there are also these platforms around there to help you and block off different pits. And so I did beat it on easy mode originally, but then after that I tried it on normal mode and I managed to beat it on normal mode. So that's an achievement for me. Also, if you actually look at the trophy list of this game, some of them, which are like defeat all robot masters with only the buster, or defeat all bosses without the helmet, which you would think adds an extra layer of difficulty, and they do, I was still able to beat it. So I actually feel that the difficulty level of this game is more reasonable compared to the earlier games. Or maybe I'm just terrible and everyone thinks this game is the worst because it's too easy. I don't know. But I think everything about this game just in general is something that I like more than the previous games. I like the music better. I like the music for Pump Man, I like the music for Solar Man, Sheep Man, Strike Man. I think they're my favourite themes in the game. But even the other levels were fine as well. Oh, and Commando Man as well. Random question, is it just me or does the music for Commando Man sound very similar to the music for Pharaoh Man in Mega Man 4? It might just be me, but that's how I feel. But I did actually go through this game, I did actually complete it. I never beat it on hard mode. I have tried. I think I managed to beat Sheep Man on hard mode, and I think that was it. Also, one thing they had with this game as well is that you could collect screws throughout the game, and that would work as your currency, and in between stages you could use that currency to buy things like extra lives, or you could use it to save you from things such as pits and all that. So there was a very light RPG grinding element to it, apart from it is really minor, so it's not that big of a deal anyway, but I still liked it. And I am going to end this part here, so thank you all for watching. I will see you all next time. Goodbye.